The atmosphere was electric as Washington, D.C. braced for one of the most momentous days in its history, the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States. Streets were bustling with thousands of attendees, from loyal supporters waving flags to protesters holding signs, all converging on the Capitol to witness the historic event. Amid the pageantry and polarized energy, the Trump family took center stage, each member impeccably dressed, exuding confidence and pride. Among them stood Barron Trump, the youngest son of the new president. At just 10 years old, Barron had been mostly shielded from the relentless media scrutiny his family faced. But today, there was no hiding from the public eye. Standing beside his mother, Melania Trump, Barron was a picture of quiet composure. His neatly combed hair and tailored suit made him look every bit the part of a first family member. Yet there was something about him that set him apart from the grandeur surrounding him. As the ceremony began, the crowd erupted into cheers, chants, and applause. Donald Trump took the oath of office, raising his hand as he repeated the words that would officially make him president. The cameras panned over the family, showing Melania's proud smile, Ivanka's elegance, and Eric and Donald Jr.'s supportive expressions. Then they landed on Barron. His expression was different, not celebratory, but thoughtful, almost as if he were processing the gravity of the moment in a way few his age could. The speeches continued, filled with promises of unity and strength, but Barron wasn't focused on the words alone. He observed the people in the crowd, their faces a mix of hope, skepticism, and even anger. His young eyes noticed things that others might overlook, the way some clapped enthusiastically while others barely raised their hands, the way some whispered to each other with frowns while others wiped away tears of joy. As the event proceeded, Barron stayed close to Melania, who occasionally leaned down to check on him. "Are you okay?" she whispered softly. Barron nodded, but didn't say much. He was still absorbing the scene, his mind working in ways that no one around him could fully understand. While the adults were caught up in the ceremony, Barron was quietly observing a deeper truth, a nation divided even on what was meant to be a unifying occasion. Little did anyone know, the young boy standing quietly amidst the grand spectacle would soon ask a question that would leave everyone speechless, sparking a moment of introspection that would ripple far beyond the walls of the Capitol. As the ceremony came to an end, the Trump family was ushered into a grand reception hall where dignitaries, politicians, and close allies had gathered for a formal luncheon. The room was a sea of high-profile figures in tailored suits and glamorous dresses, all buzzing with conversations about the historic day. Barron walked in alongside his parents, his small frame dwarfed by the towering adults around him. Yet, his presence was undeniable. While others basked in the limelight, Barron remained quiet, his thoughtful demeanor contrasting sharply with the celebratory mood. As the luncheon began, the clinking of glasses and polite laughter echoed throughout the room. Donald Trump, now officially president, moved from table to table, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. Melania stayed close to Barron, guiding him through the maze of unfamiliar faces. Despite the excitement, Barron's focus was elsewhere. His sharp eyes scanned the room, observing the interactions, the body language, and even the subtle glances exchanged between attendees. At one point, Barron noticed a group of journalists at the far end of the room. They were whispering among themselves, their eyes occasionally darting toward his family. Their expressions were a mix of curiosity and skepticism, with one or two wearing barely concealed smirks. Barron's gaze lingered on them for a moment, before shifting to the servers bustling around the room, balancing trays of food and drinks. Unlike the journalists or the guests, the servers moved with a quiet efficiency, their faces focused, but weary. "Mom," Barron said softly, tugging at Melania's sleeve. "Yes, darling," she replied, leaning down to hear him better. "Why do they all look so tired?" he asked, gesturing subtly toward the servers. Melania glanced in the direction he indicated, her expression softening. "They've been working hard all day to make this event perfect," she explained. Barron nodded but didn't seem satisfied with the answer. "Do they get to eat too? Or are they just here to serve everyone else? Melania paused, caught off guard by the question. I'm sure they'll eat later, once the event is over, she said gently. Barron frowned, his young mind grappling with the concept of inequality in such a starkly divided setting. He watched as a young server, probably not much older than a teenager, hurried past with a tray of champagne glasses. Her face was flushed, and her hands trembled slightly under the weight. As the reception continued, Barron grew increasingly pensive. He asked his mother a series of questions that made her smile softly, though she didn't have all the answers. Why do some people look so angry, even though it's a happy day? Why are the reporters whispering instead of smiling? Why does everyone talk so much about Dad, but no one asks about the people serving us? His curiosity and empathy were striking for someone his age. It was clear that while the world saw Barron as a child of privilege, his perspective was far deeper and more grounded than anyone realized. Eventually, Barron turned to his mother with a determined look. Mom, can I say something to everyone? Melania hesitated, unsure of what he meant. What do you mean, sweetheart? I want to say something important, he replied, his voice steady despite his age. To everyone here, about what I'm thinking. Melania's brow furrowed as she considered his request. It wasn't typical for a child to speak at an event like this, especially one of such magnitude. But there was something in Barron's eyes, a sincerity and conviction that made her pause. After a moment, she nodded. Let me speak to your father first, she said, squeezing his hand reassuringly. As Barron watched her walk away to find the president, his heart raced with anticipation. He had no idea how his words would be received, but he knew they needed to be said. What he was about to share would soon capture the attention of everyone in the room, shifting the tone of the day in a way no one expected. The reception hall hummed with conversation, laughter, and clinking glasses as the event continued. Barron stood silently near his mother, observing the scene with a mix of curiosity and resolve. After a brief exchange with Donald Trump, Melania returned to Barron's side and bent down to whisper, Your father said it's okay. You'll have a moment to speak soon. Barron nodded, his young face a mixture of determination and nervousness. The idea of addressing a room full of adults, some of the most powerful and influential people in the world, was daunting. But his observations had left a deep impression on him, and he felt a need to share his thoughts. When the moment came, Donald Trump stepped to the podium at the front of the room to thank everyone for their support and attendance. After a short speech, he glanced toward Barron and gestured for him to come forward. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd as the youngest Trump walked up to the podium, his steps measured and confident. The room fell silent as Barron adjusted the microphone to his height. Many guests assumed he would deliver a rehearsed, light-hearted remark, perhaps something cute or humorous to complement the day's celebratory tone. But the words that followed were anything but expected. Hello, everyone, Barron began, his voice clear but tinged with a hint of nervousness. I know today is a big day for my dad and for our country. I'm really proud of him, and I'm glad all of you are here to celebrate. He paused, glancing briefly at his parents, who smiled at him encouragingly. Then he looked back at the audience, his expression growing more serious. But while I was watching everything today, I started to think about something, he continued. We're all here having fun, eating good food, and talking to each other. But there are people in this room who are working really hard to make sure everything is perfect for us. And I don't think we've thanked them yet. The audience exchanged puzzled looks, unsure of where Barron was going with this. But he didn't waver. I saw the servers carrying heavy trays and making sure everyone has what they need. I saw the security guards standing for hours to keep us safe. I even saw someone cleaning up a spill quietly so no one would notice. They're not wearing fancy clothes, and they don't get to sit and eat with us. But they're just as important as anyone else here. The room grew noticeably quieter, the weight of Barron's words sinking in. His small voice carried an unexpected gravity, one that commanded attention. I think sometimes we forget about people who work behind the scenes, Barron added, It's easy to talk to the people we know or the ones who are famous, but the people who make things happen, who work hard every day without being noticed, they deserve our respect and gratitude too. He paused, letting his words settle over the audience. Melania watched him with tears in her eyes, while Donald Trump looked on with a mixture of pride and astonishment. So, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone here who's working to make this day special, Barron concluded, and I think we should all do the same. The room erupted in applause, a standing ovation sweeping through the hall as the gravity of Barron's message hit home. The servers and staff, who had remained unobtrusive throughout the event, glanced at one another in stunned disbelief, some even tearing up at the unexpected acknowledgement. Barron stepped back from the podium, his face flushed but relieved. He walked back to his parents, who enveloped him in proud hugs. It was a small act, but the ripple effect of his words was profound, leaving the room abuzz with admiration for the young boy's insight and compassion. As the applause subsided, several guests took the opportunity to personally thank the staff, inspired by Barron's example. What had begun as a formal traditional event had taken on a more profound and heartfelt tone, all because of one boy's thoughtful observations and courageous words. As the event began to wind down, Barron's speech continued to resonate throughout the room. People who had previously been focused on networking and celebration now looked around with new awareness. The words of the young boy had sparked conversations, shifting the atmosphere from one of formality to something more genuine and reflective. Guests who had previously overlooked the staff began expressing gratitude. A prominent senator walked up to one of the servers and offered a handshake, thanking them for their hard work. A CEO paused to chat with the kitchen staff, praising them for the exquisite meal. Even Donald Trump, known for his commanding presence, made his way to the event manager to personally thank her for orchestrating the day so seamlessly. For the servers and workers who had spent the evening blending into the background, the change was overwhelming. Many expressed disbelief, unused to receiving such direct acknowledgement from influential figures. One young waiter, barely out of high school, fought back tears as he spoke to a journalist covering the event. "I've worked a lot of these types of functions, and usually we're invisible," he said. "But tonight was different. It's like we mattered." Barron, meanwhile, had returned to his seat, feeling both relieved and proud. His mother, Melania, leaned in and whispered, "You made a difference tonight. You should be proud of yourself." His father nodded in agreement, his expression softer than usual. "Good job, son," Donald said, his voice filled with pride. "You reminded everyone of something important." As the event drew to a close, a group of staff members approached Barron to thank him personally. One of them, an older woman who had been working as a server for over 2 decades, knelt beside him and said, "You're wise beyond your years, young man. I've never seen anything like this. Thank you for seeing us." Barron smiled shyly, unsure how to respond to such heartfelt praise. "You work hard, and I just wanted everyone to know that," he said simply. The moment was captured by a photographer, the image later becoming one of the most talked about highlights of the event. It showed Barron standing beside the staff, his small frame dwarfed by the adults surrounding him, but his presence commanding nonetheless. News of Barron's speech quickly spread beyond the event itself. By the next morning, social media platforms were flooded with clips of the moment, accompanied by praise for the young Trump's maturity and compassion. Hashtags like #Barron Trump speech and #gratitude for workers trended worldwide. The story even reached international news outlets, where commentators applauded the unexpected impact of the youngest Trump. "In a world often driven by power and prestige," one journalist wrote, "it took a child to remind us of the importance of humility and gratitude." In the weeks that followed, Barron's speech continued to inspire change. Businesses began implementing gratitude initiatives, encouraging employees and customers alike to acknowledge the contributions of behind-the-scenes workers. A prominent charity even launched a campaign in honor of Barron's words, aimed at providing resources and recognition to underappreciated service workers. For Barron, life eventually returned to normal. He resumed his studies and family activities, content to let the moment stand on its own. But the memory of that night, the applause, the heartfelt thanks, and the connections he fostered remained with him. Years later, when reflecting on that day, Barron would say, "I wasn't trying to change the world or anything like that. I just saw something that felt unfair, and I spoke up." Sometimes, that's all it takes to make a difference. And indeed, that night at his father's inauguration became a defining moment, not just for Barron Trump, but for everyone who witnessed or heard about his simple, yet profound act of kindness. It was a reminder that even the smallest voices can inspire the greatest change.